Glee.
Order, order. We start with questions to the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Maggie Throup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 1.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. DSIT closely engages with all government departments on the adoption of AI, including with the HSC, and we are committed to ensuring the adoption of AI is done in an ethical, safe and responsible way. This includes using AI to improve public service outcomes and productivity in the NHS. Ahead of the AI Safety Summit last year, we announced a new AI in Healthcare fund backed by £100 million to target areas where rapid deployment of AI could create transformational breakthroughs.
Maggie Throup.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for his answer. Without doubt, AI offers an opportunity to innovate in terms of medical diagnostics. Therefore, what discussions is my honourable friend having with colleagues from the Department for Health and Social Care to ensure that the next generation of clinical scientists, including radiologists and pathologists, gain the right skills to make full use of AI?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that very important question. Ensuring the UK's life sciences sector can grow and access the variety of skills it needs to support innovation, including the adoption of AI, is a key commitment of the life sciences vision. To deliver this, we are working across government, including DFE and DHSC, industry and academia, to ensure our ecosystem can deliver and attract the interdisciplinary talent. I know the Health Secretary and the Department are also working to ensure the NHS can take advantage of the opportunity AI represents for healthcare. In addition, DSIT are actively represented on NHS England's radiology and pathology boards, where AI and skills are regularly discussed.
Rachael Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Health Select Committee's report into digital technologies of the future clearly demonstrated the opportunities that sit before us if we get the basics right. AI is not only of use for increasing productivity in diagnostics, but also setting treatment plans and in pharmacology. How is he setting out a strategic plan for how AI can be invested in the NHS for the future, like Labour has with our Fit for the Future plan?
Well, I thank the honourable member for that question. She's right, actually, that AI can play a great role in improving the way we treat conditions, provided it's implemented in an ethical, safe and responsible way. And one great example of that is Brainomics, which is already being used in 37 NHS healthcare trusts. It means that the in-out time has been greatly reduced, and 3 times more people who would have previously not been able to live independently are able to do so now because of the use of AI. And that is now also being used in additional critical pathways and learned lessons are, and I know the NHS is working closely with the HSC to make sure AI is used effectively.
Elmore.
Number 2, sir.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I will answer questions 2, 4, 6 and 10 together. In the AI Regulation White Paper, we set out our ambitious pro-regulation, pro-innovation framework, outlining 5 cross-sectoral principles to be applied by existing regulators. In February, we published our response, setting out how we are supporting regulators to deliver the framework and strengthen our global AI leadership. This includes new funding and guidance for our regulators, and we have established a central risk function to support.
Mr. Speaker, yet we heard just a few months ago, Mr. Speaker, from the Prime Minister that the UK's answer is not to rush to regulate. The CMA has been clear in the potential harms unregulated AI could generate, from baking in bases that affect certain demographics to general purpose models that could get out of control. So why has the government dragged its feet on safeguards for the most advanced AI models, or is it simply that she's waiting for the next Labour government to control the new AI models?
Mr. Speaker, this is absolute tosh. We have led the world when it comes to AI safety. We have set up a long-term process in the AI Safety Summit, and the next one will be in Seoul in just a few weeks. We have also set up the world's first leading AI safety institute that is testing both pre- and post-deployment. But we've also been really clear, we're not going to rush to legislate. We're going to grip the risks and better understand them, rather than produce out-of-date legislation as a gimmick.
Justin Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow, the TUC will officially launch its AI Regulation and Employment Rights Bill, which recognises that transparency, observability and explainability are all key elements of a fair and just workplace. So what are the government going to do to make sure that AI doesn't lead to a weakening of workers' rights?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We want to garnish the opportunities for the British public of AI, which includes the complementary aspect it can pose for jobs, especially things like teaching and in medicine, taking away some of the admin and the bureaucracy. But we're also very realistic that technology always changes labour market needs. In 1940, 60% of the jobs then did not exist then, and that's why we have undergone a revolution in our skills system, including the launch of LLE next year.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's all very well the government saying they're going to take their time over this response, but the point is the FSB are saying that regulatory framework is urgent, and Dr Ogoyski of Surrey University is pointing out that delay could mean the UK probably having no choice but to follow the US and Europe's approach to AI regulation. So can she now set out, please, exactly what the time frame will be for regulation?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the honourable member is getting confused between regulation and legislation. We already have a plethora of regulation and world-leading regulators who we are supporting. We were very clear in our white paper response that when it comes to legislation, we will legislate, as will every nation around the world, but we want to get that legislation right. She commented on the US's approach. We're working hand in glove with the US, and I signed the world's first MOU on AI institutes just a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What assessment has the government made of the United Nations plans to internationally regulate artificial intelligence and the implications for UK sovereign security?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK government is committed to unlocking the opportunities of AI, whilst of course mitigating the risks. And this requires both domestic action but also international action. And the UK is a leading voice internationally, hosting, as I've said, the AI Safety Summit, which delivered the world's first Bletchley Declaration, as well as actively participating at the UN. This includes our proactive role shaping UNESCO recommendations on AI ethics.
Chair of the Select Committee, Greg Clark.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary knows that leading AI developers are expected imminently to release new, more sophisticated AI models. So can the Secretary of State confirm that our AI Safety Institute has had access to these models, as was agreed at Bletchley Park? And is it the case that the developers have made changes to their models where they've been requested by the Institute?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I know the honourable member shares my passion and enthusiasm for this topic, but also desire to make sure that we grip the risks. Our institute is the first institute in the world to be doing pre- and post-deployment testing in line with the agreement that we made at Bletchley Park. I can't get into the specifics of which models we're testing, as I'm sure the honourable member would understand this is highly commercially sensitive information. But what I can assure him and the House, where risks are found, we do expect relevant action to be taken, and the responsibility of developers is to ensure that their models are safe. But of course, government is committed to holding them to account.
Oliver Hill.
Does my right honourable friend agree with me that to spread best practice in this field is perhaps the most important thing? And so, for example, with the health benefits that have already been mentioned of AI, for example, in the diagnosis of bowel cancer, these are things which are about promoting the health of the public at large, and these need to be pushed forward with urgency. It's not just enough to try and slow things down and over-regulate.
I absolutely agree. AI has the potential to be revolutionary, especially in areas like healthcare, which is why at the summit we announced a £100 million pot to accelerate some of our existing healthcare missions. And we are working hand in hand with the Department of Health and Social Care on this very important topic.
Shadow Minister Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AI is an incredible new technology and it can help the NHS to save lives. But there are also risks, such as the danger of deep fakes. And the government has been warned about these risks. Yet time and again, ministers have dithered and delays, and the government's failure to act was highlighted in the FT this week. So could I ask the Secretary of State, has the government run out of ideas, or is it just scared of its own backbenchers?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Honourable Member will know, we have a Defending Democracy task force that is dedicated to this very subject and led by the Security Minister. And we, as a team, are actively participating. We're also working with social media companies and our international counterparts. It's something that I personally put on the agenda at the summit. It's something that I personally discussed at forums like the G7. The Deputy Prime Minister is also leading the way with his AI compact. There is no easy answer to this, but we are working in a conciliatory and speedily manner to ensure that we address all opportunities and answers.
Paul Blackman.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The data bill before Parliament builds on the high standards we already have for personal data protection. It strengthens and modernises the regulator so that it can enforce standards much more robustly to protect people. And we're looking at what we can do to strengthen our cyber resilience and data infrastructure all the time as new technology develops.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for that answer. Clearly, it's vital that the enormous amounts of personal data that are collected by government departments and private companies must be safeguarded. I've had a number of complaints to me about people's personal data being abused by companies and indeed from the public sector it being sold to companies who then use it. Just this weekend, our GLA candidate had his phone hacked and his social media destroyed. That's equally important as a demonstration of what can happen to democracy when data is abused. So can my honourable friend take further action to safeguard people's personal data?
Well, I thank him for highlighting that case, and I regret what's happened to the GLA candidate, and it does highlight some of the risks that we all carry in relation to technology. That's why we have a very high data protection standards, but also there's a range of ways in which we need to tackle this problem. We have the National Cyber Strategy, which is working to make sure that we can deal with the cyber threats that we face. We're taking measures to protect our data infrastructure, to trying to do things to stop fraud in the National Stop Think Fraud Strategy, and new laws on security of devices, like connected devices. So there's a whole range of things we need to do, but we need to keep making sure that we're vigilant about the risks.
Jamie Stone.
Mr. Speaker, when my 91-year-old mother died, for purely sentimental reasons, I took on her landline. For months and months and months after that, I kept on getting scam calls offering all sorts of dodgy products. Does the Minister agree with me that the elderly must have their ID, their personal data protected almost more than anyone?
Well, I'm sorry to hear about the experience of my honourable friend's mother, and I'm afraid it's one that's shared by constituents across the country. That's why we have taken new measures in the data bill to try and deal with these problems of scam calls and try and make sure we can see data and see where those numbers are and take action so we can block them on bulk. But I appreciate what he's saying, and it's something that we must tackle.
Shadow Minister Chris Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are told this year is general election year. Already in other countries, we have seen those who want to manipulate democracy use AI to scrape together personal details, like someone's face and voice, allowing them to falsify candidates' views. And I think it was quite pertinent the Honourable Member for Harrow East raised that about a GLA candidate. As we quickly approach the second half of the year, when we are told the Prime Minister will finally call the election, will the government commit to ensure personal details are protected for candidates, voters, and above all, democracy as a matter of urgency?
Well, we absolutely share those concerns. That's why we have a Defending Democracy task force that's working across every government department to look at the threats to our democracy. It's a very substantial threat that we face, and one that we all have to be mindful of in the way in which we conduct ourselves as candidates. AI and fakes and the protection of data is one element of that, but I want to assure the House that we have a whole range of measures that we're taking to make sure that the protection of this coming general election is robust.
SNP spokesperson Carol Monaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Individuals' personal data is not safe in Tory hands. A recent article in The Guardian reported that senior Tory party officials plan to make millions from selling off their own members' data through the True Blue app. Now, if the Tory party is happy to sell off personal data of their own members, how can the public possibly have confidence that their data is safe under this government?
The allegations that the lady has put forward, I mean, they were written in The Guardian. They're not any that I have seen myself. I'm presiding over the data bill. I have seen no evidence to suggest that we are trying to bring forward laws that would do such things.
Thank you, Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ofcom is the independent regulator of the Online Safety Act. The government is working with them to implement the Act as quickly as possible, including the relevant secondary legislation. Ofcom is taking a phased approach to bringing the duties into effect and is consulting on guidance and codes of practice. Offences around serious online abuse came into effect the 31st of January this year.
Vicky Ford.
The Online Safety Act did introduce many measures to keep children safe online, but given the increased concerns about children's online safety, does she agree it is now time to go even further and introduce a child-safe phone, thus ensuring that at a minimum all phones intended for children are properly fitted with parental controls to stop children from accessing harmful content?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, the government did produce world-leading legislation when it comes to online safety, which puts the onus on social media companies and not the parents. I know that my honourable friend has spoken about information before, which is particularly important in making it as easy as possible for parents. She does raise an important point regarding device-level controls, and I can assure her that I'm listening not just to members of this House, but also to parents too.
Alex Davis-Jones.
Yesterday, the government finally backed Labour's cause and announced they would be making the creation of deepfake porn a criminal offence. However, it is disappointing that the government continue to adopt an intent-based approach over one of consent in relation to these crimes. Why are ministers prioritising a man's right to have banter over a woman's right to feel safe? And will the government look at the regulation of the AI apps such as Nudify and Cloth Off, which are freely available, easy to use, and exist only to humiliate and violate women?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I share the honourable member's passion for this area. It's why we put it in the Online Safety Act in regards to the sharing of this content. And now we have gone one step further and made it illegal, well, we're in the process of making it illegal to create this content in the first place.
Stuart C. MacDonald.
Number 7, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government is clear that artificial intelligence is the defining technology of our time, with the potential to transform humanity positively. But it also recognises the challenges that AI can pose. As has already been said, we are working to ensure that we respond to the full range of threats to our democratic processes, including through the DEFDEM task force. DCIT is engaging with social media platforms, civil society groups, academia and international partners to tackle the risks AI can pose to democracy.
Stuart C. MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the longer term, I absolutely agree AI has enormous potential to support participation in politics, and we should seek to harness that. But in the short term, disinformation and deepfakes, often put together by foreign actors, threaten to have the most immediate impact on democracy. So what risk does he believe that AI poses to this year's election in particular, and what steps is he taking to alleviate those risks?
Mr. Speaker, let me be very, very clear. The UK will not tolerate malicious cyber activity targeting our democratic institutions. We've already had the Deputy Prime Minister come to this dispatch box and take definitive action where that has happened. DEFDEM and government teams are working collaboratively to ensure that we can respond to threats to our democratic processes, including digitally manipulated content. And the Online Safety Act will also force companies to take proactive, preventative action against illegal state-sponsored content online via the Foreign Interference Offence, including deepfakes and other AI-generated content in scope of the Act.
In 2 short sentences, will the Minister reassure us that AI is not going to destroy not just destroy democracy, but the human race as well?
In 2 sentences, Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that the government is taking a proactive approach to AI, full stop, and that DEFDEM is working very hard to protect our democratic processes, full stop.
We come to Topical Samjab.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want the British people to be able to seize the extraordinary opportunities that AI offers, but that can only happen if we address the risks. At Bletchley Park, we kick-started a global conversation, And since then, the Bhatti effect has seen countries from around the world collaborating on the development of safe, responsible and trustworthy AI. 2 weeks ago, I signed an agreement with the United States allowing us to collaborate seamlessly on AI safety testing. And last week, we announced the date of the second AI Safety Summit in Seoul. We also remain laser-focused on implementing the landmark Online Safety Act, which will make Britain the safest place to be online. And last month, we saw the first sentencing under the cyber flashing offences that we brought in January.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A fast and reliable internet connection is vital for everyday life and so many local businesses. Yeah. I conducted a broadband survey in East Devon. Some rural parts of my constituency still sadly lag behind: Sidbury, Fluxton, Marsh Green and Tallerton. What steps is the government taking to make sure that broadband providers improve connections across our county?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to say that over 75% of premises in his constituency can access gigabit-capable broadband. That's up from 6% in 2019. But we want to do more, so we've included Mid and East Devon in our cross-regional framework for Project Gigabit, and that's currently undertaking pre-procurement market engagement, and we hope to be giving news very soon.
Shall the Secretary Peter Kyle?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first act of this Prime Minister was to promise a government of professionalism and integrity. Yet here we have a Secretary of State who uses her position to accuse a British scientist of being a terrorist sympathiser. She goes on to use public money to settle her libel, and then she tries to cover up just how much taxpayers' money she wasted. Can she tell the House, are these the actions of someone with integrity and professionalism? Yes or no?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Minister responsible for UKRI, officials in my department alerted me to a tweet which stated, "This is disturbing. Suella Braverman urges police to crack down on Hamas support in the UK," with no further context or wording. This was posted by a representative of an EDI board that sits under UKRI. At the time, like many others, I was indeed concerned and used the forum in which she used to alert UKRI to my concerns. This was highlighted using that medium, but on receipt of the letter, UKRI CEO themselves said that they were deeply concerned and launched an investigation.
Thank you, Paul.
Mr. Speaker, WhatsApp can be very handy, but it can also be very dangerous. Its end-to-end encryption means even the most vile illegal content like child sexual abuse cannot be policed or prevented. Given the obvious dangers to children, does she agree that it is woefully irresponsible of Meta to reduce the age for WhatsApp to 13?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are pro-innovation but also pro-privacy. However, it is clearly not right for anyone to be exposed to such harms as sexual abuse, extortion or grooming on any service. Platforms must have robust processes in place to safeguard children in response to the Online Safety Act. Responsible encryption has an important role to play in protecting privacy, but it shouldn't compromise safety, and Ofcom will take robust action when this is compromised.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. At the Lord Science Committee, the Secretary of State said there had been no surveillance of academics in that case. Mr. Speaker, what was the evidence which she based her decision to write to the UKRI Chief Exec on then?
Mr. Speaker, I've answered that multiple times. An official alerted me to these concerns. I then saw the tweet myself, and also I asked the department for further advice.
The Kettering-based company Intertech is the only company in the world that can manufacture and completely recycle circuit board technology. The potential for it and for the UK is huge. Would the Minister for Science, Research and Innovation be kind enough, please, to visit Intertech in Kettering to see this groundbreaking innovation for himself?
Mr. Speaker, Intertech is indeed a great example of innovation in sustainable electronics. I was pleased that they've benefited from £250,000 in UK support, and it would be my pleasure to visit my honourable friend's constituency in Kettering, and I believe we've got a date soon.
Gregory Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, Northern Ireland should have virtually 100% access to fibre broadband, which is a first in any of these islands, following the confidence and supply agreement with the previous government. Does he agree with me that regions like Northern Ireland and other regions in the UK should take full advantage of that broadband access to maximise employment opportunities across these islands?
Absolutely, he's right about the importance of gigabit broadband to the economy. And I'm very glad to say that 95% of Northern Ireland has that access. So it's the highest percentage in the country, and that's a tribute to the work done between the central government and the Assembly.
Sir Edmundley.
Why should people living in rural areas be second-class citizens when it comes to mobile phone coverage?
Well, we agree. That's why we have the Shared Rural Network programme that is dealing with a lot of those not-spot problems.
Tim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Minister, the number of black students entering into STEM are leaving in great numbers. So can you say what you're doing to identify the challenges and what you're doing to help progression of black students in STEM?
Mr Speaker, the government is absolutely committed to expanding STEM opportunities. A key way of doing that is building mathematical capabilities, helping girls and minorities stick with maths. That's why the Prime Minister announced our ambition to see all young people receive maths education until aged 18.
Final question, Nigel Mills.
Amber Valley has a high incidence of respiratory disease, so what more can the government do to increase investment in research into respiratory conditions in the areas that need that research the most? I'm clinging on to
the Medical Research Council is benefiting from the highest ever level of research spend. I'd be very happy to meet with my honourable friend to talk about what more we can do in this important area.